official misconduct, judicial misconduct, prosecutorial misconduct is all basically the same. How do your indictment picture have shadows going parallel with the curb, and then all of a sudden, 30 seconds later, your picture has shadows perpendicular with the curb in 30 seconds? Louisville, Kentucky. Be careful. Don't perform judicial misconduct.
According to a report by the National Registry of Exonerations, official misconduct is at the root of more than half of all exoneration cases. BNC's Narissa Knight has more on Richard E. Jackson, the former Dallas County prosecutor who permanently lost his license to practice law in Texas again.
Oh, this is an epic day.
34-year-old Mayan Burrell was recently released after spending more than 18 years in prison. He was wrongfully convicted and given a life sentence at 16 years old after a stray bullet killed an 11-year-old. We caught up with Burrell in George Floyd Square in Minneapolis after Burrell met with and hugged people who allegedly withheld video that would have proven his innocence.
I was just released from prison after spending more than 18 years in prison for a crime I didn't commit.
Are you mad? Are you resentful?
Like, what do you mean by that?
At whoever's fault it was, you didn't do the crime.
Of course, it's going to be some anger, but more than that, I'm motivated. I'm motivated to actually change the conditions of my people.
While Burrell was convicted in Minnesota, the states with the highest wrongful conviction rates are Illinois, Pennsylvania, Texas, and New York. Last month, the Texas Bar Association stripped the law license of a former Dallas County prosecutor, Rick Jackson, who withheld evidence that resulted in 2 capital murder convictions of black men 20 years ago. They were recently freed. Chairman of the Texas Bar Association Law Practice Management Committee, Stephen Bolton, says prosecutorial misconduct is unacceptable, and that's why the state had to take action.
In this case, the prosecutor failed to follow the Constitution and provide information that showed the innocence of these 2 defendants, and it's totally unacceptable.
And he was disbarred.
Yes, he relinquished his license and is no longer a practicing lawyer in Texas.
While righting wrongs is good and a start, it doesn't give Mayan or the more than 2,500 others who've been wrongfully convicted since 1989 their years and lives with loved ones back.
So I'm doing everything in my power to channel the energy that I have and the pain from the deprivation, from the trauma, and channel it to actually push for change with my people, you know what I mean? Take them up out of an oppressed state.
Let's bring back BNC's legal contributor and veteran prosecutor, Paul Henderson. All right, Paul, we both prosecuted, and I'm sure we've got tons of stories about prosecutorial misconduct that we've seen firsthand go unchecked. So this case coming out of my old office is a rare example of severe punishment for misconduct in a wrongful conviction case. This former prosecutor sent 2 homeless black men to prison for life for a murder where 1, witnesses couldn't pick them out of a lineup, 2, neither men matched descriptions provided to investigators, and 3, prosecutors made secret deals with jailhouse informants for biased testimony, and none of this information was ever mentioned to the jurors. Your thoughts?
Well, I'm glad that you framed it with this is a rare type of repercussion, because it is. And when you see the numbers where you see the number of folks that were wrongfully charged and served terms, it's a reminder for all of us that when we're talking about reforms, we can't just focus on police. We have to look at the entire spectrum, especially the race disparate spectrum in the criminal justice system. What you're alluding to and why this is so rare, we've been having conversations in the past about qualified immunity, but for prosecutors, there's an absolute immunity. And that's why seeing repercussions like this is so rare. Absolute immunity was created in 1976 from the Supreme Court. And essentially what it means is that prosecutors cannot be sued for misconduct related to their advocacy in court. And that includes information where they falsified evidence or they haven't turned over exculpatory evidence. And the only repercussion, and this is the repercussion that we are seeing, where we're seeing action, is the lane evolving where they're held accountable within the profession. So there's disbarment. And the counter to that from policing is if we have some sort of post-certification where we're evaluating the very profession, where people are allowed to engage in the profession after they've engaged in misconduct. The reason we're having this conversation is because we don't have repercussions from the prosecutorial side for criminal charges related to advocacy, and you can't have repercussions for civil liability. So they can't face lawsuits because of this absolute immunity that we were talking about. And this is before we start having the more complicated conversations about proactive intent and proactive actions from prosecutions to re-examine and look at things like retesting DNA or looking at revamped fingerprint knowledge that has become available using technology to reevaluate old cases to determine whether